Hello guys, this is Donald's Movies, and today I got another World of Warcraft role-playing guide. Now this one has been long requested, and in this video I will be covering the Druids, which are one of the most confusing races in the lore, or at least in the average World of Warcraft player knowledge, as a lot of the Druid stuff is written in the books, and in places that not every World of Warcraft player checks. So in this video I will address a few things. First off, what are the Druids, how do they work, and how do they work for each famous race, as that is where the most confusion comes from. So let's not waste any more time and let's just get into the video. So what is a Druid? Now, Druid is an individual that is highly connected to nature, and in a sense he is the nature, I guess you could say that. And they're similar to the shamans in a way, but their connection is a bit more deep, as they cherish every living being on the world, whether it is a plant or a worm. Now shamans on the other hand also have a connection to the nature, sort of, but it's more of the elements, which I guess could be considered the nature, but it's more of the dead nature, such as the water, the rocks, the fire, the air and everything like that. Now, being a druid requires a lot of devotion, and it's not really something anyone can do. They keep the balance of the nature and prevent anything from harming it, which is why it is hard for them when they're away from nature and they feel a bit lost in the crowded capital cities like Orgrimmar or Stormwind. The word druid is a bit of a vast term, and it isn't really the same for all of the races, and it's pretty much the same for almost any other class in World of Warcraft. Not every race has the same definition of that class. Now at this point, it is not really known who the first druids were. Yes, there are some theories, there are rumors, but nothing is really certain on who the first druids were. The Night Elves are considered the first ones, but with us actually finding about Xerantur, the Witness, who is a Tauren, it is also possible that the Tauren were the first druids as well, so it really isn't that certain. Now the original druidism was taught by the demigod Cenarius, who is known in the legend as the son of the goddess Lune herself, which in itself is a really confusing matter, and I would actually suggest that you check out my Who is Lune video. It's pretty much a lore lesson where I explain all the possible theories that are going on right now about the Lune, who she is and what she is about. But Cenarius was the one who taught the druids, and is the reason why we have so many druids today. Now Malfurion is the first Night Elven druid, and as I mentioned before, Xarantar the Witness is also considered one of his first students as well, and that is pretty much the reason why we can't pinpoint druidism to a single race. Now I'm going to cover the main races such as the Night Elves, the Tauren, the Trolls, the Worgen in a bit, but first I want to give you some important information about druidism, such as the power of the nature and shapeshifting. So the power of the nature is mostly similar to shaman magic, as it is sort of being lent through a connection that the spellcaster has, unlike the arcane or the fel magic for example, which the user can just abuse and even be corrupted by. So a druid who values the nature can call upon its powers and call upon, for example, thunderstorms and starfall, which is a bit of a complex matter in itself, but I explained that in some of my other videos. I believe I explained most of it in my Lune video. Now they can also call upon the ancients, the trees, root their enemies and do all sorts of stuff that the nature can do. But on the other side, they can also use the power of the nature for healing the wounded, cleansing poisons and things like that. But it also has its weaknesses, just like any class in the game pretty much, and it is pretty logical at this point. For example, you can't root somebody on top of like a building or cause a thunderstorm in like a closed off cave, which I guess you can't do in a game. You can cast a spell in any part of Azeroth, Outland, Draenor or whatever it is. So keep that in mind while roleplaying, as you aren't really roleplaying the class that is in game, you're roleplaying the actual lore version of the druid. And don't do any sort of crazy magic if it can't be done at that current location. Now another really important thing is shapeshifting, which by a lot of people it's completely misunderstood. Now the art of shapeshifting isn't as easy as it looks in the actual game, and there is much more to it, and a lot of more experienced druid actually practice shapeshifting and they can do it a lot more easier than the ones who are doing it for the first time. So when you take on the form of an animal, you pretty much connect with the spirit of that animal, and you two merge in a mutual relationship, which is why it is important to be in a good relationship with the spirits. And what is a weird feeling for the first time is your body completely changes, and depending on the animal you are, you feel different. So it's not like you're a night elf that turns into a bear and you're like, oh, I'm just a bear, I'm just like a night elf inside of a bear, but you actually are the bear and you're both connected through the spirits. Now another thing to remember is that you can't really stay in that form for too long, as you can actually risk losing your mind and becoming a feralkin. Now usually experienced druids sense before this happens, so they can transform back and sometimes even stay away from it for some time until they're certain about their mind and their own actual sanity. Now it is also not completely certain whether you can or cannot speak while you're shapeshifted, But there is a lot of things currently in the Warcraft lore that are not certain, and there's a lot of theories going around and everything like that, so it really kind of depends on what you think and on some of the details that you have currently and some proof, because there's proof that you can speak and there's proof that you can't speak, so it is a bit of a confusing matter. Now, another important thing that many druids are connected to is also the Emerald Dream, which is a complex matter, but I will try to give you the lore of it in just a really simple way. So the Emerald Dream is pretty much an alternate Azeroth built by the Titans, which they actually used before creating the current Azeroth, and there the nature can fully grow without the contact of other possibly malicious living beings, and they really can't interfere with the nature, and many actual druids were in deep slumber helping protect it until they were woken up by the death of Cenarius. That happened like during Warcraft 3. Now there is also the Emerald Nightmare, which was stopped by Malfurion, even though it is said that small pockets of it still remained out there. Now there are currently two main races that practice druidism, and those are the Night Elves and the Tauren. Now the Night Elves are the biggest one, and they are one of the first ones to be taught, and since the end of the War of the Ancients, through Malfurion and the general hatred of the Arcane by the Night Elves, since pretty much they called upon the Burning Legion and all the chaos that happened to it just because of the arcane magic. So they pretty much incorporated it into the heart of their society, and it's one of their biggest purposes right now in their lives, like druidism and keeping the balance of the nature. Also, some Night Elves are actually born with antlers and golden eyes, meaning that they have a natural predisposition to be talented druids. Famous ones are Malfurion, Illidan Stormrage, and also Brawl Baremantle, and it is also said that it is possible to acquire the golden eyes and the antlers by mastering the art of druidism. Now, until recently, the males were mostly druids, while the females were priestesses of the Elune, but actually, after the invasion of the Burning Legion, like the second one that happened like 30 years back, 20 years back, that actually changed, and both males and females can be both. And that is it for the Night Elves. Now, on the Tauren, it is a bit of a different case, and as I said, they were one of the original races and the first students, but they actually forgot about it, like about druidism, and only recently they reincorporated it into their society. And they're also quite similar to the Night Elves, but in general there's this thing with the Tauren where they mostly pretty much do the same thing as the Night Elves, but they just keep like a different version of it, such as worshipping the Earth Mother while the elves worship the Elune, and also having all sorts of the same stories. They just present it in a different way compared to the Night Elves, so they're actually quite similar to the Night Elves. Now the Trolls, on the other side, are a completely different case, and they only became druids recently. Now I won't go into too much detail here right now, as I actually made a video called Trolls in the Lore. I will link in the description below and also put it on the screen, so you can check that out and understand how it works. But simply they had a vision of the Emerald Dream, and they found a way to connect with the spirits of the Loa and practice the druid magic. Now they aren't the same as the other druids, but it's just like the priestesses for them, for example. They aren't the same as the human priestesses, and they also worship the Loa, so the entire class thing is a bit different compared to the other classes. Now for the Worgen, it is also a completely different case, or sort of completely different case, at least compared to the Trolls. Now the actual Gilnean, like the humans, practiced some form of pure basic druid magic in order to grow crops, and since they were isolated from the rest of the humanity, they really needed that, and the people that practiced it were called the Harvest Witches, and the magic they practiced was called the Old Ways. But the actual Worgen curse that only happened recently is druidic in nature, and it goes thousands of years back when a small part of the Night Elves, known as the Druids of the Sight, started shapeshifting into a wolf form, and then they started losing their minds and the control over their bodies, so they were banished into the Emerald Dream. And only recently they were summoned by a Rugal in order to protect Gilneas from the advancing Scourge, since the Gilneas was isolated from the rest of the humanity, and when the Scourge attacked, like, they were at their gates, so they needed a way to get rid of them. And Arugul had the idea to summon the ancient Worgen, which actually backfired on them, and soon the entirety of Gilneas was starting to get infected by the Worgen curse, and that is why the Worgen are as they are today. Now it is considered that the Worgens currently are taught the ways of druidism by the Night Elves, since they had some background and some basics of druid magic, and they also have a druidic type of a curse, so it kind of works out for them. And that is all I have for this guide. I hope this helped you out, and I hope you had enjoyed, and feel free to leave your feedback on what you think and also what you would like to see next. Now currently I'm working on every class right now, just like I did for every race before, as you have a playlist. so I'll try to get a new RP guide out soon. Now if you have any questions for the druids, feel free to leave them in the comment section below, and if I missed them you can also ask me on my twitch.tv stream, as I'm gonna start streaming in a bit. Now don't forget to hit the like button if you like the video, and also subscribe if you're not already subscribed to the channel, as it really helps out keep these videos going and all the content improving. Thanks a lot for taking the time out of your day to watch this video, and see you next time.